A black farmer steps into a Missouri courtroom to protect land his family has held for generations, only to face a judge's scorn for his rural drawl. But when he reveals a letter penned by her own ancestor, the room, and the nation, falls silent. What was in that letter that shifted everything? What if he'd stayed quiet? Share your thoughts below, and hit like and subscribe for more stories that stir the soul. Now, let's go back to that crisp Missouri dawn. At 5:47 a.m., Jeremiah Coleman, 62, stood before a chipped bathroom mirror, the air heavy with pine soap and wood smoke. His face, etched by decades of sun and struggle, stared back. Gray beard, neat, eyes sharp despite years of toil. He buttoned a faded denim shirt, worn soft by time, and pulled on boots crusted with his land's dirt. Looking at his reflection, he murmured to the empty room, "This fight ain't just dirt. It's them thinking I can't stand proud." Downstairs, the kitchen glowed faintly, a wood stove crackling against the morning chill. Martha Coleman, 58, his wife of 37 years, moved with quiet grace, pouring coffee, hers with sugar, his black as always. Jeremiah sat at their weathered table, hands rough as bark around the mug. Beyond the window, 120 acres of Missouri soil waited, sacred and vast, anchored by a lone sycamore where his father taught him to aim a rifle and sow corn. This wasn't just land, it was legacy. That land, bought in 1870 by Jeremiah's great-grandfather, Moses Coleman, was a testament. Freed from slavery, Moses, illiterate but unyielding, saved every penny from hauling lumber and mending barns. With an X on a deed, he claimed 120 acres. No schooling, just grit. Jeremiah kept that deed in a leather pouch, its scent of old ink and cotton still alive. To him, it was more than property. It was proof his kin had built something enduring, untouchable by force or fate. Now, a slick energy company, backed by city officials with polished shoes, wanted it. They called it public benefit. Wind turbines, tax breaks, eminent domain. A letter arrived with a check, generous to those who'd never tilled that earth. To Jeremiah, it was theft dressed as progress. Martha set biscuits on the table, her hand grazing his arm. "Speak like you always do, Jay," she said. "Truth don't need fancy." He nodded, eyes heavy, reaching for a folder holding the deed, and one old letter. Outside, a horn blared. Lena Coleman, 24, their daughter, leaned against the truck. Law student with fierce eyes and a heart tired of her father's endless fights. She tapped the hood as he climbed in. "You good, Pops?" she asked softly. He adjusted his cap, gazing down the dirt road to the courthouse. "Been ready my whole life," he said. "Just didn't think I'd still have to be." The truck rolled forward, dust trailing like embers, carrying Jeremiah toward a battle for more than land. The Harwood County courthouse was plain. Worn columns, peeling paint. A door that groaned in winter. Today, it loomed like a reckoning. Inside, the courtroom hummed with locals, clerks, and a few teens clutching notepads in the back. No cameras, just the scent of stale coffee and old wood. Jeremiah sat alone at the plaintiff's table. No lawyer, just his folder, a water bottle, and a letter sealed in plastic. Lena sat behind him, fists tight, her glare fixed on the judge's empty bench. Judge Clara Hensley, 45, white, Harvard Law, 2001, strode in, robe crisp, hair in a tight knot. Known for cutting through nonsense, she barely glanced at the crowd. With a sharp nod, she opened the session, scanned her tablet, and exhaled. A hint this case was beneath her. "Mr. Jeremiah Coleman," she said, voice like polished glass, "you may begin." Jeremiah rose, steady as an oak, hands on the podium, No notes, no nerves, just truth ready to spill from a man who'd earned it. "Your Honor," Jeremiah began, "I ain't got courtroom talk, but I got what's real. This land." He didn't finish. Judge Hensley's eyes narrowed, lips curling faintly. "Mr. Coleman," she cut in, loud and clear, "are we in a courthouse or a backwoods revival?" The room froze. A few nervous laughs broke the silence, sharp and uneasy. A teen in the back scribbled fast. Another stared at the floor. Lena's nails bit into her palms, but Jeremiah didn't waver, his gaze locked steady ahead. The laughter faded, but the sting lingered. Jeremiah didn't flinch, didn't frown, just stood taller. His voice, calm as a still pond, filled the room. "You can mock my words, ma'am, but that don't change what I'm here to say." The air shifted. Something in his unyielding calm made the judge's bench seem smaller. The silence wasn't just quiet. It was heavy, like shame settling over the room. Lena's eyes burned, not with anger, but pride, as her father refused to shrink before the gavel. Jeremiah didn't shout or plead. He reached into his folder, pulling out a yellowed paper in a plastic sleeve, its edges frayed but sacred. With the same steady steps that carried him through floods and funerals, he approached the bench. No rush, no show. He set the paper before Judge Hensley, met her eyes, and said, "Before you jest again, read what your great-uncle wrote about this land." The room stilled, breaths held, as if the walls themselves leaned in to listen. Judge Hensley's brow furrowed, then softened. She adjusted her glasses, lifted the paper, a letter, dated April 17th, 1931, inked in bold strokes. No legal seal, just a Missouri crest in the corner and a signature. Edward Hensley, Harwood County Judge. Her great-uncle. She cleared her throat, voice quieter now, and read aloud. "To Harwood's people, let no court or law outweigh the honor of those who toil for freedom on their soil. When justice ignores their labor, it betrays its own name." The words landed like stones in still water. Judge Hensley's face paled. Jeremiah stood unmoved. "My great-granddaddy Moses," he said, "was your great-uncle's clerk. Helped him write that when banks took farms in the Depression, black farmers mostly. That's his pen, too." The truth cut deep. The judge's legacy, her name, her robe, was tied to a man who'd championed people like Jeremiah. Now she'd mocked one for the same fight. The silence grew thicker, heavy with the weight of history staring back. No one stirred. The bailiff shifted, unsure. Lena's breath caught, her eyes on her father, fierce with awe. The teens in the back stopped writing, pens frozen. Jeremiah returned to the podium, hands firm. "You thought my voice was small, ma'am," he said, "but your great-uncle didn't. He heard it, wrote it down so folks wouldn't forget." He paused, letting the words settle. "You carry his name. I carry his promise." The courtroom didn't feel like law anymore. It felt like reckoning. For a moment, nothing moved. The silence wasn't empty. It was alive, like the pause after a storm. Judge Hensley sat rigid, no quip, no gavel, just the weight of truth. Jeremiah took his seat, hands folded, calm as ever. But the room had changed. It wasn't about land or deeds anymore. It was about a man standing tall when the world tried to make him small. The teens in the back exchanged glances, one scribbling again, as if to capture the moment's gravity. Then, unnoticed, a 16-year-old in the back, Tyler Brooks, on a class trip, had been recording. He'd started when Judge Hensley mocked Jeremiah's revival talk, capturing every word, every pause, the letter's reveal, and Jeremiah's final line. "You carry his name, I carry his promise." Tyler didn't think much of it, just instinct. An hour later, at school, he uploaded the 92-second clip to TikTok, captioned, "They mocked his voice. He made them hear his truth." By dusk, it wasn't just a clip, it was a spark. The video spread like wildfire. Hundreds of views turned to thousands, then millions by morning. Hashtags bloomed: #, honor the land, #, stand with Jeremiah, #, voice of truth. On X, a retired librarian in Maine wrote, "His voice sounds like my granddad's, steady, rooted, true." A trucker in Texas posted, "Ain't about how you talk, it's what you say." Across Missouri, folks shared the clip in diners, churches, group chats. Jeremiah's calm defiance wasn't just a moment, it was a mirror, reflecting a nation grappling with its own echoes. By breakfast, the clip hit national feeds. A college student in Oregon tweeted, "He didn't just defend his land, he defended dignity." In Memphis, a pastor played it mid-sermon saying, "That's the voice of faith, not fear." Farmers in Kansas and Kentucky posted videos holding soil, saying, "We don't sound alike, but we fight alike." Jeremiah's stare, his unwavering calm, became a symbol, not of anger, but of reverence for what's earned, not given. The country wasn't just watching, it was remembering. Back in Harwood County, the courthouse felt the ripples. Locals whispered about the video in gas stations, barbershops. The teens from the courtroom, now minor celebrities at school, recounted Jeremiah's stand like it was legend. Lena scrolled through comments on her phone, eyes wide at the flood of support. Jeremiah, though, was already back home, oiling a tractor, unaware his words had reached beyond Missouri. To him, it was still about the land, the deed, the promise he'd made to his ancestors' sweat. The video's reach grew, crossing oceans. A London teacher shared it with her class, saying, "This is what courage looks like." In Harwood, the county clerk's office got calls. Reporters, activists, curious citizens. Judge Hensley's name trended, not for her robe, but her misstep. Yet Jeremiah stayed grounded, tending his fields, unmoved by the noise. His fight wasn't for fame. It was for the sycamore, the soil, the story his great-grandfather carved with a borrowed plow and an unyielding heart. The courtroom moment lingered online, dissected in podcasts, quoted in blogs. A New York poet wrote, "His voice wasn't loud, but it carried centuries." In rural Missouri, farmers taped Jeremiah's words to barn doors. "I carry his promise." Lena, checking her phone, saw strangers thanking her father, some crying in videos, others pledging to visit Harwood. The nation wasn't just moved, it was stirred, as if Jeremiah's stand had cracked open something long buried, a truth about who gets heard and who doesn't. Tyler's TikTok clip kept climbing, 20 million views by noon. Civil rights groups amplified it, demanding accountability. A Georgia reverend paused his sermon to play it, saying, "That's not just a farmer, that's a prophet." Schools shared it in civics classes. Baristas scrawled Jeremiah's name on coffee cups. His defiance, his letter, his calm became a beacon. People didn't just see a man. They saw their own silenced voices, their own fights, reflected in a Missouri farmer who refused to bow. The clip's caption, "They mocked his voice. He made them hear his truth," became a rallying cry. A retired cop in Idaho posted, "I served 30 years. Never saw courage like that." A Miami artist painted Jeremiah's silhouette, letter in hand, captioned, "Legacy Speaks." The video wasn't just viral. It was a movement, pulling people from every corner to stand with a man who'd turned a judge's laugh into a nation's reckoning. Jeremiah's fight was no longer his alone, it was everyone's. A Chicago professor shared the clip, saying, "Jeremiah's voice carries my uncle's fields." In Alabama, a choir sang his words in harmony. By evening, the video hit 30 million views. A welder in Nebraska posted, "He stood like my dad did, unbending." The nation saw more than a farmer. They saw resilience, a man who turned mockery into memory. Jeremiah, unaware, was back in his barn, sharpening tools. His fight for 120 acres had sparked a fire, uniting strangers behind a truth rooted deeper than soil. The video's echo grew louder. A Seattle chef wrote Jeremiah's line on her menu, "I carry his promise." In Harwood, churchgoers quoted it in prayer. A Tennessee farmer filmed himself holding dirt, saying, "This is my voice too." The clip wasn't just shared, it was felt. People saw their own struggles in Jeremiah's calm stand. By night, hashtags multiplied. #, rooted in truth. #, Coleman legacy. Jeremiah, still oblivious, fixed a gatepost as dusk fell, his focus on the land, not the millions now chanting his name across screens. The movement swelled beyond Missouri. A Detroit poet scrawled Jeremiah's words on a mural. "You carry his name." Farmers in Ohio and Georgia posted videos, boots dusty, saying, "We feed the nation, same as him." The clip became a symbol, not of protest but of pride. People weren't just angry at the judge, they were inspired by a man who spoke softly but shook the ground. Jeremiah's defiance, his letter, his roots, reminded a country that dignity doesn't shout. It stands steady and sure. By Friday, Jeremiah's name was everywhere. Headlines, podcasts, group texts. He was still in his field mending a fence when a black SUV rolled up the gravel drive. A woman stepped out, 38, in a gray suit, heels sinking into dirt. She didn't offer a card, just a firm gaze. "Mr. Coleman, I'm Simone Carter. I want to help save your land." Jeremiah paused, hammer in hand, and squinted. He didn't speak, just nodded once, then kept working, wary but listening. On the porch, Simone sat with Jeremiah, Martha hovering, eyes sharp. Simone, Stanford Law, raised in Memphis, was known for dismantling shady deals with facts and fire. She didn't preach, she listened. Jeremiah eyed her thick folder, skeptical. "I've spoken my way all my life," he said. "Don't need my words polished." Simone leaned in, unfazed. "I'm not here to change your voice, Mr. Coleman. I'm here to make it echo." Something clicked. He didn't need a hero, just someone to amplify his truth. Over 2 days, they worked as a team. Lena dove into county records, unearthing digital maps and deeds from 1888. Simone spotted flaws. The energy company's plan targeted Jeremiah's land before he was notified. Signatures on zoning forms looked copied. Boundary lines shifted in the developer's survey, misaligned with state archives. It wasn't error, it was deceit. By Saturday, Simone drafted a motion to remove Judge Hensley for bias, attaching the viral clip, the 1931 letter, and a petition with 400,000 signatures. Jeremiah stayed grounded, reading the motion twice, hand on the leather pouch holding his deed. "This ain't about clever words," he said. "It's about making sure my kin ain't erased." Simone nodded. "We won't plead for justice," she said. "We'll demand it. On paper, in court, loud as thunder." Lena, poring over scans, found a forged date stamp sealing the case. The fight wasn't just for 120 acres anymore. It was for every farmer who'd been cheated by greed dressed as progress. Monday dawned heavy, the air thick with purpose. By 6 a.m., folks lined the Harwood courthouse. Some in ties, others in work boots, all drawn by Jeremiah's stand. No banners, just quiet conviction. Inside, the courtroom brimmed, not with gawkers but witnesses to truth. Jeremiah sat up front. Denim shirt faded, boots scuffed. Simone arranged her files with precision. Lena clutched a notebook, her breath steady. The crowd wasn't here for a show. They came for a man who'd turned a laugh into legacy. Judge Hensley entered, robe pristine, posture rigid. She tapped her gavel. "Court is in session," she said, but her voice lacked its usual edge. Simone rose, calm but commanding. "Your Honor, we move for your recusal due to bias, misconduct, and ethical breach." Hensley's eyes sharpened. "On what grounds?" she snapped. Simone didn't waver. "Your recorded mockery of my client's voice, a letter from your great-uncle contradicting your actions, and 400,000 citizens demanding fairness. The people know dignity when they hear it." Hensley bristled. "This court doesn't bow to online mobs," she said. Simone's voice stayed even. "Then bow to the law's own code. A judge must uphold public trust in justice." The room stilled. Jeremiah stood, his tone steady as stone. "You didn't just mock my drawl, ma'am. You mocked my daddy's plow, my mama's scrubbed floors, every soul who earned their place. I came to speak truth. You made it a joke." His words weren't loud, but they carried the weight of generations. The gallery froze. Hensley's gaze swept the crowd, meeting not anger but quiet reproach. She saw her great-uncle's letter in their eyes, her own name tarnished. Then, without a word, she stood, removed her glasses, and left the bench. The door clicked shut, final as a locked gate. No cheers rose, but the room stood one by one, not for victory but for respect reclaimed. Jeremiah sat, hands folded, his calm unbroken, as if he'd always known truth would outlast scorn. 3 days later, a new judge took the bench. Samuel Holt, 64, black, a former public defender who'd spent decades shielding small farmers from corporate grabs. Known for fairness, he shunned fanfare. The courtroom felt lighter, no buzz, just focus. Holt nodded, voice low. "Let's begin." Simone stood, presenting Moses Coleman's 1888 deed, a 1905 map confirming the land's bounds, and a witness, Esther Lane, 72, a retired surveyor. Lane testified the developer's map was doctored, lines shifted, signatures faked, it was no mistake. Holt listened, face unreadable. He turned to the defense attorney, now ashen. "Any proof Mr. Coleman sold or ceded this land?" Silence. The lawyer stammered, "No, Your Honor." Holt's eyes narrowed. "Then why was eminent domain invoked?" No answer came. The truth was raw, undeniable. Holt's ruling was swift. "This court upholds Jeremiah Coleman's claim to his property, fully protected under law. All developer documents are referred to the Missouri Attorney General for fraud review." The gavel fell, not heavy, but final. Jeremiah didn't cheer. He shut his eyes briefly, maybe picturing Moses's X on that deed. Simone touched his arm lightly. Lena's eyes glistened, not from relief but reverence. Her father's fight was now etched in stone. The crowd exhaled, a shared breath of justice. Holt's gavel wasn't a sentence. It was a restoration. Outside, the courthouse steps felt sacred, as if the ground itself had witnessed something enduring. Jeremiah packed his folder, tipped his cap to Holt, and walked out, steady as ever. Jeremiah dodged reporters, ignored cameras. He drove home, the late sun painting his fields gold. Martha waited on the porch, apron flour-dusted, eyes knowing. He nodded once. She smiled, no words needed. That night, under the sycamore, Jeremiah and Martha raised a flag, crafted from her father's Vietnam jacket and their wedding shawl. Stars sewn from faded stripes, it fluttered not with pomp but with memory. The land sighed, as if it knew its story was safe, held by hands that never faltered. Word of the ruling spread fast. Online, the clip gained new life, paired with Holt's verdict. A Dallas teacher tweeted, "Justice isn't loud, it's clear." In Harwood, locals toasted Jeremiah in diners. Lena read comments praising her father, some calling him a hero. He shrugged it off, back to weeding rows. The nation didn't just celebrate. They reflected, seeing in Jeremiah's stand a call to honor the overlooked. His 120 acres weren't just saved, they became a symbol of what's worth fighting for. The story rippled further. A Virginia farmer mailed Jeremiah a seed packet, writing, "Plant this for us all." Churches weren't just about land, it was about standing tall. In Atlanta, a mural of Jeremiah's silhouette rose, letter in hand. Schools taught his story, his words now in textbooks. Jeremiah, though, stayed humble, tending his fields, fixing a tractor. He didn't seek fame, just the sycamore, the soil, the legacy Moses carved. His victory wasn't a headline, it was a promise kept, unbroken by time. Online, the movement grew. A California artist sold prints of Jeremiah's flag, proceeds funding legal aid for farmers. In Missouri, a diner named a burger the Coleman, beef, local greens, and grit. Simone lectured at law schools, holding up the 1931 letter. "This isn't history," she said. "It's a mirror." Jeremiah's words, "I carry his promise," echoed in protests, poems, prayers. His stand wasn't just a case, it was a call to listen to voices long ignored, to see strength in quiet defiance. Harwood's courthouse got a plaque, crowdfunded by thousands, farmers, students, welders. It read, "You mocked my drawl, but not my daddy's plow." Jeremiah Coleman, 2025 below. Where dignity stood firm. No officials ordered it, people did. At its unveiling, folks came from 8 states. Jeremiah stayed home, planting corn, but Lena attended, snapping a photo for him. The plaque wasn't for glory, it was for memory, ensuring Moses's X and Jeremiah's voice would endure, etched in bronze and time. The story seeped into classrooms. A Street Louis teacher showed the full courtroom video, pausing at Jeremiah's line, "You mocked my mama's floors." A student asked, "Why'd she laugh?" The teacher wrote on the board, "Power fears clarity, not volume." She added, "Jeremiah didn't shout, he cut through." That clip went viral too. Schools in Texas, Kentucky, and Oregon added his case to lessons on bias and courage. Simone spoke at colleges saying, "His presence was the precedent." The nation was learning to hear. Jeremiah's legacy grew quietly. A retired judge from Kansas left a book on his porch, inscribed, "Clearest defense I ever saw." Judge Harlan, 1980 to 2010. Martha read it aloud. Jeremiah nodded, then fixed a fence. His fight reshaped lives he'd never know. In a Florida school, a girl quoted him in a speech, "Truth don't need polish." Farmers mailed him seeds, notes, soil jars, thanking him for standing. His 120 acres weren't just land, they were proof that one voice could shift a nation's heart. The headlines faded, but the impact didn't. A Wisconsin poet wrote, "Jeremiah's voice was a sycamore, deep-rooted, unbowed." In Harwood, kids drew his flag in art class. Simone's lectures packed auditoriums, her binder now a book deal. Jeremiah, though, kept farming, boots in the dirt. His story wasn't about fame. It was about roots, about carrying Moses' promise through a courtroom and beyond. People didn't just admire him. They saw themselves in his stand, their own voices rising, steady and sure. At dawn, Jeremiah drove to the courthouse, thermos of Martha's coffee in hand. He stood before the plaque, hands in pockets, the cold biting. He didn't touch it, just looked, remembering Moses, his father, the sycamore. Taking a sip, he whispered to the bronze, "Let 'em laugh now. We're still here." He turned back to his truck, toward fields that needed him, toward a life that didn't need cheers to feel whole. His victory was quiet, but it echoed forever. The next day, folks arrived at Jeremiah's farm, unannounced but reverent. They parked along the gravel road, pickups, sedans, bikes. Some brought cornbread, others left notes tucked in the fence. For Moses' hands. A man from Arkansas set a clay pot of soil from his own land under the sycamore, whispering, "For every voice they tried to silence." Another tied a daisy to a post, note reading, "Truth grows here." They didn't come for Jeremiah. They came for the land, for the legacy it held. More came, quiet pilgrims drawn by the flag Martha sewed. A teacher from Illinois left a pebble painted with dignity stands. A veteran from Tennessee dropped a folded letter. "You spoke for us all." The sycamore became a shrine, not of worship, but of recognition. Jeremiah worked nearby, hoe in hand, nodding occasionally. He didn't seek their gifts, but he understood. His fight had cracked open a truth. Voices like his, long ignored, could still shake the ground beneath power's feet. A week later, a retired judge from Missouri, Clara Vance, 78, visited. She left a journal on the porch, no words spoken. Inside, in neat script, "Never saw a stand so steady. Judge Vance, 1970 to 2000. Martha read it to Jeremiah as he fixed a barn hinge. He grunted, kept working. The land demanded his hands, not his pride. Yet the gifts kept coming, seeds, stones, prayers, each a nod to a man who turned a courtroom into a mirror for a nation's soul. Jeremiah's story spread to schools. In Kansas City, a history teacher played the courtroom video, pausing when Jeremiah said, "You mocked my daddy's plow." A student, cap low, asked, "Why'd she laugh at him?" The teacher wrote on the board, "Power fears truth's clarity." She added, Jeremiah didn't yell. He carved truth into silence. That moment went viral, shared by students nationwide. His words became a lesson, not just in law but in courage, showing kids that quiet strength could outlast a judge's scorn. Schools in Arkansas, Virginia, and Indiana wove Jeremiah's case into lessons on justice and bias. A Louisville professor held up the 1931 letter saying, "This isn't history, it's a challenge." Simone's talks filled lecture halls, her voice echoing Jeremiah's calm. A viral post showed a child in Oregon drawing the sycamore, captioned, "Where Truth Grew." The story wasn't just taught, it was lived, inspiring people to honor their own roots, to speak when the world expected silence, to stand like Jeremiah under pressure. The Harwood courthouse plaque drew crowds. Funded by welders, nurses, farmers, it stood firm. "You mocked my drawl, but not my mama's floors." Jeremiah Coleman, 2025, where dignity answered. Visitors came from 9 states for its unveiling. Jeremiah stayed home, tending soybeans, but Lena sent him a video. He watched, silent, then returned to his fields. The plaque wasn't for him. It was for Moses, for every hand that tilled unowned earth, for every voice that power tried to drown but couldn't. Months later, a Nashville singer wrote a ballad, Coleman's Sycamore, its chorus quoting Jeremiah, "I carry his promise." It climbed charts, played in barns and churches. A Texas librarian shelved a book of his quotes, kids circling his words, "Truth don't need polish." Simone's book, Echoes of the Deed, sold out. Jeremiah, unmoved by fame, kept farming, his boots in the dirt. His story didn't fade. It rooted, like the sycamore, growing in hearts that valued substance over noise. Jeremiah's legacy wasn't in headlines, but in lives changed. a Montana farmer named his newborn Jeremiah. In Georgia, a teen wrote his words on her graduation cap, "I carry his promise." The sycamore stood taller in stories, a symbol of unbending truth. People didn't just remember Jeremiah, they carried him in their own fights, their own fields. His stand showed that one voice, steady and true, could ripple across time, reminding a nation that dignity, once claimed, never bows. If Jeremiah's story touched you, pause and reflect. He didn't just save 120 acres, he reclaimed a truth. Your voice matters, even if it's soft, even if it's different. This wasn't just a courtroom tale, it was about roots, memory, and the courage to speak for what's yours. Like and share this story with someone who needs it. Subscribe for more tales of grit and justice. Your support fuels these stories, honoring everyday heroes like Jeremiah, who prove truth endures. Thanks for listening. Under the Missouri sun, where 120 acres of Coleman land whispered tales of Moses' plow, Jeremiah Coleman stand in a Harwood County courtroom, cracked open truths that still echo. His voice, mocked as a backwoods revival, carried a legacy that silenced a judge and stirred a nation. 2 lessons rise from this dust like embers. First, dignity doesn't need a polished tongue, it demands clarity. When Jeremiah laid Edward Hensley's 1931 letter before Judge Clara Hensley, her great-uncle's words, "Honor those who toil," shamed her scorn, proving a farmer's truth can outweigh a gavel's weight. His calm, not loud but sharp as a sycamore's roots, showed that standing tall, even alone, can shift history's gaze. Second, legacy is a living fire, not a relic. Jeremiah's fight wasn't just for land, but for the hands that tilled it, his father's, his mother's, Moses' X on a deed. When millions shared Tyler's TikTok clip, from Kansas diners to Georgia churches, they didn't just cheer. They carried his promise, sewing flags, etching plaques, planting seeds under that sycamore. The courthouse plaque, funded by welders and teachers, bears his words, "You mocked my mama's floors." It's a beacon that one voice, rooted in 120 acres of sweat, can spark a nation to remember its own silenced stories. As Jeremiah returned to his fields, boots caked with Missouri dirt, he taught us, speak when they laugh, stand when they doubt, and the ground itself will rise to hold you. What truth would you stand for, like Jeremiah Coleman did for his 120 acres? His voice shook a courtroom and a nation. Now it's your turn. Share your story in the comments, hit like if his courage moved you, and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more tales of grit and justice. Your support fuels these stories, bringing more lessons of dignity and legacy to inspire us all.